Welcome, folks, to this edition of City Talk. Our guest today is Sun Prairie's new mayor, Dave Hanneman. Dave has been married to Mary for 45 years and has 4 children, David, Joe, Margaret, and Amy. He's lived in Sun Prairie since 1965. Prior to becoming mayor, Dave served 8 years on the Dane County Board and 5 terms as a Sun Prairie alderman. Dave, welcome back to City Talk.
Well, thank you, Don.
Congratulations, first of all.
Well, thank you again. Very nice to be here.
Yep. Before we get into city issues, Dave, why don't you tell us your impressions of the county board process that elected a new county board representative to replace you, and tell us what you can about the new representative, Gene Nelson.
Well, the process had been in effect for, I'm going to guess, about 3 years. There were 2 or 3 other county board supervisors that filled vacancies under the same process. The process, for those that may not have known it, was that the county board chair, Kevin Kesterson, came out to Sun Prairie. They meet with prospective candidates within the district being served, and the other gentleman that was there was Tim Satterfield. Tim is the, he's pretty much the person for the county board supervisors, and there were other county board supervisors that were there and observed, listened, and we had 4 candidates for the vacancy of the chair that I gave up at the end of July. We had a new gentleman in town, I think it's Robert Christensen. I know that the last name is correct.
I think you're right.
But, and then was Bruce Oraday.
Former alderman.
Former alderman, and current alderman is Nick Vogley from the 4th District, and Nick had thrown his hat into the ring as well, and a gentleman by the name of Gene Nelson. And Gene has been a resident here in Sun Prairie for, not quite 3 years, I think, at this point in time. But Gene had spent 34 years in county employment as the controller and overseeing the financial obligations of the county. He left under strange circumstances, but was immediately hired back as a consultant by the county executive. So I really, with Gene filling that vacant chair, there's probably no one on the county board, including Lyman Anderson, who is probably the oldest long-term gentleman on that board. But Gene, I think, as far as the county board operations, Dane County in general, that there's no one that knows Dane County any better than Gene Nelson does. And of course, in this trying times of the financial restraints that are being placed on everything, Gene has a tremendous background in the finances, and I think is an excellent replacement choice. Now, all of the folks that ran, as I did mention at that evening, that I was happy to see them out and taking part in this. It's something that I also said was that I hope come election time in April, when that spot
seat comes up for election again.
Right, and every 2 years, that I would hope we'd see some of those other faces there. It's gotten to be a very difficult situation to get candidates to run for virtually any office. And county board has been no exception in that regard. But I did have opposition on a few elections during that time frame, but and that's good. I think the people need to have a choice, listen to the various candidates and decide from them as to whether or not their thoughts and ideas coincide as to how county government should be run, or city government for that nature.
First off, tell us how you like being mayor, and is it what you expected, or?
Oh, it's everything I expected. Certainly, I didn't go into the campaign with my eyes closed. It's Sun Prairie has grown up From the time that I first served on the city council, we were a little over 3,000 in population. But when I went back on 15 years ago or so, we were in the midst of, again, good building booms. So the community has grown, and with the growth, of course, come many problems that have to be ironed out. The city council does a good job. They're very conscientious, and but the position of mayor is one that is also there to provide, I think, leadership from the standpoint not only for city council, but staff people within the city hall operations. And I think that was something that unfortunately the past time frame was lacking because of the ill health of the former mayor. But it's something now that I think is back on track. I spend virtually 5 days a week, not full 8 hours a day, though there are days that there are many full days. During the summertime, of course, the activities are involved for weekends as well, social gatherings, things of that nature, but it has, over the summertime, has become almost a 7-day job. With budget coming up, and which we're starting in the midst of, and I'm sure you'll be asking about later on, I have taken a position of wanting to be hands-on mayor and to oversee this. I have very good working relationships with department heads, staff people within the city building, and within the council as well. That I'm not here as a headhunter. I'm here as someone to perhaps provide a little bit more stability in the position of mayor.
As you're aware, Dave, the job of mayor in Sun Prairie has become virtually a full-time position, albeit paid at a part-time level. Do you foresee a time in the not-too-distant future when the pay scale and responsibilities must be formalized into full-time status?
Well, I'll address it in this regard. The responsibilities of full-time status, yes, I think we're approaching that. We have, of course, a city administrator, assistant city administrator, persons in this regard, but I can foresee that it would become, within, I think, the foreseeable future, that the city should look at the responsibilities that are there in that office of providing a full-time mayor. It's something that well, with everything that's on the plate and the way that various things are happening within this community, you can spend a full 8-hour day shift down there and work through, or try to work through, some of the problems that are ever present.
In most cities that have full-time mayors, as I can recall at least, there is no city administrator. The mayor has a chief of staff or someone that is his staff person, and the administrative that currently fall upon the city administrator would fall upon the mayor and his chief of staff. Do you see potentially that there's a role for both a city administrator and a mayor, or does the city administrator have to go if the mayor becomes full-time?
I think in this regard, you pretty well answered the question on your own. We have a very competent city administrator in Pat Cannon. With a job change as far as his chief of staff, that would probably do away with the terminology of a city administrator. The only other alternative that I could see is if the city were to go with a city manager.
Right.
And then, of course, that eliminates the position of a mayor. And as an ex-council representative and current mayor, I don't necessarily agree with city management, city being run by a city manager. I think it's beneficial that the people of the community, whichever community it is, has the opportunity to elect the individual. A city manager's position is not an elected position and doesn't have the responsibility to respond necessarily to the community, and the community is not necessarily responsive to the city manager, and by not having an elected official there that they can either remove from office at the next election time frame, or is not necessarily responsive to the total community on an individual basis. So I would not look for this community to go with the city manager type of operation.
So does that mean the city in the foreseeable future is big enough to have a city administrator and a full-time mayor?
Well, someone in the capacity, regardless of what title you put on it, yeah, I think that we're getting to that stage. If you look at the development that's taking place within the community with the total west side development alone, not looking at the east side development, which of course now is, for those of you that are watching that maybe get down near City Hall, some of the old buildings are already down and flattened, being crushed, and like the old Phoenix, new is going to rise from the ashes. But with the West Side Development Program, the Smith's Crossing, the Liberty Squares, the Providence, already intact with Wyndham Hills, we currently have available over 7,200 dwelling unit lots proposed for this community on the West Side Development alone. And if you're looking at that's dwelling units, that's not retail, that's not any type of other type of space use. And if you figure even 2.5 people per lot, at 7,000 lots,
Could double in size pretty quickly.
we're going to be very quickly. We're going to be well in excess of going from not quite 23,000 people at the present time to easily over 35 to 37,000 people in the not too far distance future. Is that good? Not sure. There's a lot of things that have to be considered as we go through the process on this. Development in itself is not bad as long as it's well planned, which I think this is being well planned. But with the strain of these type of numbers, there are so many other things within the community that are going to be stressed and strained. And not to put the burden or the onus on the residents that are existing here now for additional taxes to pay for some of these have to be generated by people that are going to be coming in and will be utilizing the new need for services such as the wastewater treatment plant. We're approaching, of course, maximum capacity at this point in time with that structure. We're currently looking at not only expanding facilities, but rehabbing the old system, the sewer system itself at the treatment plant. And we're looking at a proposed cost at this point in time of $25 million on that. There were 2 proposals that were brought forth that we could build it now and let it sit idle for a while as far as the extra capacity, but that would put the burden of the primary cost on the existing city residences, and that is not fair, and I kind of lobbied against that. It'll be built into 2 phases, and there will be slight increases on existing homes and as far as sewer rates, but they will be minimal. They will not be outlandish like it would be if we'd put this in. But it's things of this nature. As this community grows, and this growth is not going to happen tomorrow, even though we have 7,200 lots available, we're looking at this growth to occur over the next 5 to 7, 8 years. So we're not going to just automatically wake up one morning and have a Sun Prairie be a population of 35 or 37,000 people.
Back to the sewer plant subject for a moment. As you're well aware, the city's been setting aside money for expansion of the sewer
Correct.
plant. So the cost of that expansion is somewhat mitigated by the fact, but the city
correct.
has been proactive in terms of ensuring that there was some money to accommodate that
That's
need
correct.
for expansion. I'm not sure, have you any idea how much money has been set aside in that replacement fund to date?
I believe the replacement fund to date is right around $5 million.
Right.
And by breaking it up into two separate phases, the second phase would be available to be built once the population reaches that necessary area. The initial phasing cost will be probably in the neighborhood of around 15 to maximum around $18 million to put in the first phase. The second phase, of course, would follow at a lesser cost based upon 2003 dollars. We being the city, and you had been part of this too, as far as when we were trying to set aside monies for replacement fund, the equation probably didn't work out quite so well because of the cost increases of not just labor, but on materials as well. So we thought we would be a little bit closer, but we're not. We're going to try and rectify that in the future for the second phase, and as new development comes in, for them to be paying their fair share, so that that will accommodate the
Is that the sewer
building.
hookup fee? Is that
Right,
one?
right. The initial connection charges.
Right.
Correct.
Okay. Another issue discussed in recent years is possible change in election terms for both mayor and city council. How would you feel about changing mayoral terms to 4 years and possibly city councils to 3 years, for instance?
Well, this has been an ongoing
It certainly has.
question. This goes back many, many years. Well, let's start on the council. I have always been in favor of a 3-year term for the council representatives. Under the best of circumstances, it takes a new council representative at least a year to get their feet on the ground, really know what's going on within the community, and become part of all of the issues that are facing the community. And you turn around and then you've got 1 active year of a representative that is there, that can do the job and knows what's happening. So a 3-year in that regard would be a much more beneficial term. And as far as the mayor's situation, as far as that time frame, again, there are similar and like type issues at hand. A 2-year term is not necessarily beneficial, though someone coming into the mayor's office hopefully has some background knowledge and isn't completely taken by surprise as to all of the problems that they're faced with, or all of them, not necessarily are not all problems, but all of the issues that they're confronted with. I would probably be in favor of a longer term for the mayor, whatever that time frame be, whether it be the 3-year, whether it be the 4-year. Excuse me, I'm not really set on that. 4 probably would work out the numbers quite well, but 3 wouldn't be out of the question either.
Madison's 4 years, isn't it?
Correct.
Most places that have a full-time, it's usually
Most are
4
full.
years. I'm not
That's
so sure
correct.
you'd get anybody to run for a full-time mayor's job if it was 2 years and you had to potentially be out in the job market again.
Excuse me.
So,
No, that's very true. In the 4-year time frame, if you're going to have a full-time mayor, it definitely would need to be a 4-year time.
as you just mused, we've had this discussion many, many times over the years, privately and at the city council table, about the potential of changing the terms, and the argument always seems from many people that the shorter the term, the more responsive you are to constituents. So from a constituent point of view, the shorter the term, the better, because you're constantly thinking about getting reelected and sensitive to my needs as a constituent. How do you respond to that?
Well, I don't think that's necessarily true, Don. I think that the people that we've seen in the city council level, for the most part, have been very, very conscientious. And for the majority of them, they run for election anyway. And for the most of them, they are reelected to continue on. And I believe that they're responsive regardless of, and would continue to be responsive regardless if it were a 3-year term or not. I think it would give a greater amount of stability. Elections, while they're a great thing, 2 years for a city council representative, as I stated in the past, I don't think is long enough, and I don't think going to 3 that there would be any impact on the people that the people have elected to sit in those chairs would become less responsive to the community or to the electors.
Fair enough. Your mayoral campaign early this year centered on a fiscal responsibility platform. In fact, I can see you sitting in front of the camera right now saying the issue is fiscal responsibility. In light of the continued growth of the city and state cutback in aids, how do you intend to stop double-digit levy increases in city budgets?
Well, I've spoken with staff very early on and department heads. I talked with them and reinforced what they already knew, is that municipalities all over the state of Wisconsin are going to be in financial problems because of financial problems that are occurring within our state government. For the most part, all of the department heads for their budget requests have borne that in mind. As I said, I've established what I feel is a very good working relationship. We've had growth within the community, which is going to take up some of the slack. As far as the increase in levy, that's a different situation, because here we're dealing with a very explosive community as far as population. Levy is going to naturally rise just because of our fiscal growth of homes and businesses, things of this nature. The thing I've always been striving for and talked about on the campaign trail is no increase in taxes, and to do that without sacrificing public services. That's why I said I'm having very good response from the department heads, working relationships. We're all trying to make it work. And the preliminary figures, and that's all I have to work with at this point in time, are the preliminary figures that we're going through as far as the various departments and brief overlay and overlook of capital improvements, things of this nature. I'm confident that we can bring this budget with no increase in the municipal tax to the city residents. It still would make me feel much better if we can have even a minimal reduction in taxes. People have to be aware of all that we can do as far as myself as mayor, city staff, department heads, and the city council is be responsible for the city portion of their tax bill. They've got to remember that on their tax bill, they also have public schools, they have the county tax, they have the MATC tax. Those we have no control over. But I'm fighting very hard to make sure that the residents, when they look at their tax bill, will follow that line of municipal tax, and there will not be a tax increase there.
Speaking of the city budget, where exactly are you and the city council in the process right now, and exactly how much did we lose in state aids this year? And do you know what we're going to lose next year yet?
Where we're at in the city budget has not been brought to the council at this point in time. Meeting with Pat Cannon, the city administrator, Margaret Powers, Bill Burns, who is the finance director, and myself are meeting on this level to go over. Next week we're starting to meet independently with all the department heads and go over with a fine-tooth comb their individual budgets as being presented to us. I'm anticipating that the budget will be presented to the City Council by the middle of October at the latest, and hopefully the Council will be pleasantly surprised. I don't look for, well, there's nothing wrong, I was going to say, too many disagreements. Nothing against disagreeing, just don't get disagreeable in this basis. It's, no, the budget is coming along, and I think we're moving at a very good pace, much more rapidly than I can recall in the past.
The issue of state aids, how much money did we lose this year, and how much do you envision losing next year? I know that was another one of the themes in your campaign, is that this isn't the worst, folks. The worst is yet to come.
I still feel that's true. I think at this point in time, and this is strictly off the top of my head in a guesstimate, was around $364,000. It's what I've been talking about, and with discussions of various department heads, is to look for a way that we can exist within the community without state aids. I mean, certainly they're nice because state aids are necessary to cover a small portion of state mandates that are brought forth to communities and counties in this sort of situation. I hope it doesn't happen, but I can foresee a time when the state is not going to be in a position to continue funding a lot of these things. The funding should go perhaps in this regard to schools, to put forth the dollars that for financing education without going overboard. Some of the schools, the costs are far too excessive per student capita for educational purposes. I think that the state needs to look at how those dollars are handled there. Dollars that are left over certainly will come to communities such as ours in the future, but I think they will be of a lesser degree down the road, and I'd like to prepare the community for looking at beyond the state financial aid. There are some things that perhaps I can address after the budget, some thoughts and ideas that might be beneficial in providing the income necessary to run city government here in Sun Prairie without burdening the taxpayers further, and perhaps still reduce property taxes in a greater form.
Now, this doesn't mean in saying that you don't think the city ought prepare for the possibility of no state aids. You're looking into your crystal ball and envisioning a day where there is no state aids to municipalities anymore, which some people say is clearly handwriting on the wall. Now it's just going to take longer to get to that level. You're not advocating that we spend beyond the constraints of the fiscal restraint program as it currently exists.
No, definitely not. Definitely not. And it may be a crystal ball, but it's picked up from what you're discussing. This is common talk in state level government, as well as meeting with other mayors from around the state and what their the financial crunches that they're also involved in, and what their prognostication is for future state aids, if you will.
Another state funding related issue is the interchange for Highway 151 and Highway C. Have you received a firm commitment to construct the interchange yet? And if so, when will construction begin? Also, what will the city's share of that cost be?
Yes, we did receive a firm commitment from the Department of Transportation State Secretary Frank Bucciolacci, I believe is his name. Forgive me, Frank, if I've butchered it. We had quite a bit of communication, and it's ongoing communication with DOT. But when I first heard, which was shortly after being in office, that Sun Prairie was one of the projects that was again to be cut. That would have been the fifth time since 1995 when it was scheduled to be put forth. And communicated with the secretary, communicated with the governor, and met with both of those individuals. And we did get a firm commitment. However, at this point in time, the interchange itself is necessary. There's no question about that. Just with the existing growth that we've had on the west side and the growth of the American family system, excuse me, included in the interchange is the proposal for expanding Highway 151 to 6 lanes of traffic from the American Parkway to just past the Main Street exit here in Sun Prairie. The interchange itself is not the problem. The problem is the reconfiguration and the reconstruction of County Trunk C, Reiner Road, more being C as we go on up toward Highway 19. In order for the West Side development to be economically feasible for this community, there has to be some high-scale, high-quality retail to act as the anchor for that development. And where we're having continual discussions with DOT is how to traffic into and out of efficiently, safely, of any retail development that would be on that west side. And there are roadblocks going on at this point in time. So as far as the interchange itself, the reconfiguration of C, I'm meeting again on Friday. I'm meeting following Monday on some of these cares and concerns with DOT, with the developers. So that's an ongoing. Is it a done deal? No, at this point in time, it isn't a done deal.
So we don't really have a hard, fast number from the city's perspective. I've heard numbers bandied from 2 million all the way to 7 or 8 million in terms of the city's share of just the interchange.
Well, the city's share of the interchange and land acquisition for the interchange, plus the city's share of the reconstruction or the acquisition of lands on County Trunk C, I think the last figures that I saw were approximately $6 million.
And that includes Highway C reconstruction?
That includes most of the Highway C reconstruction on this basis. Those figures, and I've been working to reduce that through various ways with the developers, rather than having the state purchase the land and then we buy it back. It's economically, it's much more feasible for us, the city, to buy the land from the developers, negotiating price with them, and save approximately $4 million in doing it that way and still receiving the proper credits from the state. So it will cut our costs considerably on that basis. And that part is moving very nicely. It's more or less the ingress, egress for the retail complex, regardless of what's out there. Mom and pop novelty stores will not work out there. They won't last, and they won't bring in the economic growth factor that we're looking for to help the city sustain such a development as being proposed.
Speaking of West Side development, are you happy with the job done by RTKL in attempting to develop a community consensus plan that accommodates those that want and those that oppose the large-scale retail development you're talking about?
I'm very happy with the RTKL plan, but like any other plan, even in its final aspect, we're in the process right now of reevaluating, modifying certain roadways, certain zoned areas for different types of zoning that perhaps was shown on our TKL plan to make it more of a Sun Prairie community development plan. The retail and so forth and commercial that you speak of here, I think I just spoke of there in order to make this development economically feasible, and those are the words that I definitely choose. It needs to have a good upscale retail complex, not to compete with Easttown, more competition with Westtown, or perhaps even upscale from some of the Westtown stores.
As you're aware, the majority of the criticism of the West Side plan is directed at the possibility of big box retail in general and Woodman's in specific. Since the final public hearing on the plan has already passed, when do you believe the council would make a final decision about accommodating or rejecting Woodman's as part of the West Side plan?
Well, very simply, probably it'll come before the council late October. It'll be late October. It'll go through the Planning Commission first with some of the revisions that are currently underway through our planning department, working with the developers, working with DOT, looking at little connecting roads, this sort of thing, to make sure that the traffic flow is proper for the growth that's anticipated out there, and to be able to accommodate that, and to have traffic flow from the east side of Sun Prairie to the west side and back and forth in a very, very straightforward manner.
As you're aware, Your Honor, at the last public hearing on the issue, part of the criticism leveled at the Woodmans was the joining of the retail part of the grocery store with the warehousing part of the grocery store. I recall at least 3 or 4 speakers that said the warehouse part of that store did not belong in a development so closely abutting a single-family neighborhood and other retail. Are you convinced that the quote-unquote warehousing part of that store is only to accommodate that store and not a regional warehouse facility, as some people have?
My understanding is that it's not a regional distribution center. From what I can gather, the way that Woodman's buys product, they will bring in product not only for their store, but they may bring in a specific product in bulk, so that when a delivery is made for that specific store, they may pick up something else to carry to a different store, but not an overall, it may be a smaller amount. Traffic increase isn't there. They don't, at least what I'm told, they don't bring in trucks to refurbish the store's supplies and then bring in separate trucks to pick up merchandise to take out and distribute throughout the area. Is that when a truck is coming in, they may pick up something else to go to another store that they have a delivery going to anyway. And these deliveries, this type of a delivery is done generally in the evening anyway when it's not there. The other thing that, and you mentioned, is a store of this nature abutting a residential neighborhood. And if you think back on the plan, that retail complex, and I'm speaking of the whole complex now, does not have neighborhood anywhere surrounding it at all. It's by itself, and it is proposed to be a totally different outward appearance from the stores in the Madison area people may be familiar with as far as a Woodman's. They have built stores now in Kenosha. I've seen pictures of that. They're building one in Milwaukee, which is supposed to be, and I haven't seen that. You wouldn't even recognize it as a Woodman's. It's that upscale. And I wouldn't be, if the Woodman's is to be built, and that's of course a judgment call on Woodman's themselves, then I would expect to see something different than what people within our local area have an outward vision of a Woodman store. I think it'll be very upscale, well, through landscaping, things of that nature, that it will not be a big box set in the middle of a field surrounded by asphalt.
Well, I think the plan itself precludes the possibility of that if it's adopted, because first it doesn't provide wood with the frontage to 151. It kind of screens them
Correct.
with other smaller stores in
Correct.
the front. And the plan submitted at least has all sorts of other smaller development surrounding Woodman's.
Correct.
And so I guess the only issue remaining now is the size and, as you alluded to, the architectural pushing of the envelope, so to speak, that Woodman's is willing to accommodate to Fewer and Sun Prairie over there moving here.
That's one of the things, and I'll just interject too, when you spoke about the architectural design. I'm looking to put together an architectural design committee, knowledgeable individuals from architects to some developers, builders, etc., and to take that onus off the planning department. You can't, you can't be masters of everything, and that's why I think with the growth that we're experiencing and the diversification of east side, west side, I think it's timely to have a good, substantial architectural design commission.
You know, although I was one of the proponents of doing it initially, but I guess in recent years I have found it a little less than appropriate to have developers bringing in swatches and boards with various building materials and roofing materials and stuff like that, and presenting them before the Planning Commission and the Committee of the Whole for their acceptance. I guess we've talked about an architectural review board or design commission or whatever you want to call it in the past, but with some of the negative press that Madison's gotten from its architectural review board at various times, perhaps the idea was shied away. Maybe you're right. Maybe there is somebody with a more of an inclination to be interested in that sort of thing, and people with more professional expertise ought be reviewing those kinds of issues rather than the Planning Commission and the City Council.
As you know, I sit on the Planning Commission as chair, and I don't put myself in the category when I look at swatches to try to envision the finished product. It's not my forte, and one that works in this field has a better handle on it and can be extremely beneficial to the Planning Commission and to the City Council, bringing forth recommendations there that of ways that they see things to be constructed.
Well, you just said bringing forth recommendations to the City Council, which differs from the architectural review boards as they're normally constructed, where they're usually autonomous bodies that report back to nobody. There is no appealing there. So because of the concerns with taking politics out of the issues.
Well, yes, but this would, and I can envision this board of their reporting back to hand in hand with the Planning Commission, because I think it all goes hand in hand with the Planning Commission, and funneling back into the City Council for final approval.
Well, so you're not interested in taking it to the level that Madison is an autonomous board. You're looking at making them an adjunct of the Planning Commission with a specific role to play, so to speak. Okay. Is it fair to say, to finally drop the Woodman's issue, that you believe they're willing to make the necessary concessions and push the architectural envelope, as I suggested that night, far enough to accommodate the concerns of those on the City Council that are still whether Woodman's is the right thing to do or not?
Well, I haven't seen any of their proposed architectural design drawings for this store. I have heard nothing from anyone to the contrary, that they are not willing to work with the community. So I would have to say, based upon the little knowledge that I have as far as what their design features would be, I would think that just because of the attitude that I've seen, is that they're very willing to work with this community.
Okay, fair enough. As is becoming increasingly apparent this week, as you look across from City Hall, the city has invested well over $4 million to date, and maybe it's more than that now, on property acquisition and demolition in an attempt to reinvigorate downtown. In light of the simultaneous development which will probably occur on the west side when construction begins downtown, what steps should the city take to ensure that west side development does not dampen the prospects for a revitalized or rejuvenated downtown?
Well, I think we've already taken the steps prior to my being seated as mayor. The city has, of course, accepted some design proposals. They have accepted the developer that will do the work for the most part, Don Hooser, Inc. And the proposals there are, I think, very, very nice. You're going to see the extension of Lindenrud Drive coming all the way through that development area on up to Main Street, which will add another link to an east-west thoroughfare that has not really been there. A very convenient one with the reconstruction of Lindenrud Drive. That's a beautiful street to handle now. West traffic south of Main Street. We have that. We have. We're still looking at, I'm sure, a number of things. I like the looks of that corner. That will be a kind of a small community park area. It's. I think that maybe if I had to look at something that might be a little bit too small, I think the people will utilize that are downtown. As a community center directly across from City Hall. Been approached by a widow who'd like to put some things in there in remembrance of a husband, and I think that's an excellent, excellent idea. I can envision, some nice shade trees, perhaps a little fountain of some sort. Running water is very soothing and very calming. Some nice benches. A place for people to go, relax, nature, if you will.
We would both agree, though, that a nice place to relax, except for the people that are living down there still has to be some reason for them to come down there in the first place.
All right.
And so it gets back to the issue of the concern on the behalf of some people that this new west side development as proposed will dampen, if not pound the final nail in the coffin of any potential downtown revitalization. Do you agree with that, or why are they different?
No, I don't really agree with that. I think that you're dealing with two separate issues, two separate entities that can live together and can prosper together. The proposals for the east side development are such that there will be retail, there will be some, there'll be condominiums, there'll be apartments for people to generate that nucleus. There'll be two separate retail sites in there. Dave Simon is looking at, of course, salvaging the old cannery building. Mm-hmm. I can see many uses for the cannery building. Its site location and rehabbed and done well. He's looking, of course, at something like a microbrewery in there, the restaurants, what have you, in that basis. It's an excellent location, and especially with the parking lot during the summertime. Our farmers market be a great spot for that. That in itself on weekends brings people downtown, and as that can be expanded, that's going to bring people down to that level of town as well. It's you and I have discussed this in the past, that we need to have something down there to generate
You're reading my
the
mind.
traffic flow. Well, I'm knowing you
Go
long
ahead.
enough. Generate the traffic flow. We've bantered this about. We don't have, or at least I don't have, a specific in mind. I'm open for all kinds of good suggestions as to what can be there. Youth activities, I think could be an ideal situation. What specifically, I'm not sure. I know that in talking with the folks from Angel Park, they have been approached, which by outsiders to expand the use of Angel Park and to bring in some things that would accommodate youth activities as well and make it more user-friendly rather than just a Sunday evening midget auto races, which are fun to go to and fun to watch, but it would give a much better utilization to Angel Park, and Angel Park, of course, is right there, just south of this entire complex. People are about it. Specifically, I can't tell you, Don. Don't know.
No. I don't think anyone knows. I would just once again make the case that, ironically, recently the show I had with the Sun Prairie hockey coach was on the air, and they're talking about being in the very preliminary stages of looking seriously at a new facility. So
Right.
I would just encourage you,
Certainly
the park, the Angel Park Board and everybody else, to, if in fact the prediction made by Brian Vanderwall is true, that to make downtown successful, you're going to have a substantial central draw. I think you're right. That and
Yes.
potentially other uses should be looked at seriously if we're really serious about bringing people in large numbers to downtown.
Well, that's why I said I'm open to thoughts and ideas and suggestion, and certainly keep an open mind to them.
Okay, fair enough. Another West Side issue is the satellite emergency services. That's fire, police, and EMS station on the West Side, which was promised by the mayor and council during the fire department debate a couple of years ago. Why is it taking so long to get this project moving, and what is the current status?
All right. Why is it taking so long to get the project moving is that it is designated to be part of the West Side Development Program. And for all of the reasons previously stated, as far as the delay of the West Side program itself, there are still, as far as site location, if in the plan that was developed by RTKL, it shows a roundabout, the big circular drive circle on County Trunk C. That's being talked about. It may be in, it may be out, it might be a four-way intersection or so on. Part of that, we've looked at the West Side station. If it's a circle, we know fairly well where it'll go. But if it's a full interchange, then it's going to reconfigure and for land acquisition. So for that reason, the city hasn't moved forward to specifically purchase that land, because we're not sure as to whether it'll be circle or interchange. We will be moving forward, in fact, at the present time, in order to fulfill the city commitment on this. If need be, we'll go out and rent a house, a duplex, whatever, rehab it, so that the EMS can be available to service the West Side in a very, very timely fashion. That can happen yet this year, so that the EMS will have a double station. We are, of course, looking at the full safety center as it is, which will include the EMS, police to a lesser degree. I'm looking at, and of course it's some of the things that have come up again, is that the talking about a third story on the city hall building in the next 5 to 7 years. I've made a suggestion, and I will follow through on it, is with the construction and the adequate construction of the West Side building, is to consider moving police records to that facility, the distribution area for the 911 service center to that facility, free up space in City Hall for their essentials, but not tied in essentially with the officer movement and force, and to free up that space within City Hall and utilize that for, and if there is a need for time and expansion, rather than to go to the cost to put on a third story in City Hall.
The primary reason, as I recall it, for even talking about a West Side emergency service station was the fire department.
Correct.
And the significant concern about response times for the fire department, especially to the further West Side developments such as Wyndham
Right.
Hills and the newer developments that are going on. While it may be nice that EMS is prepared to be there, I sense that since EMS has full-time 24/7 coverage, that's less of an issue than the fire department, which does not have 24/7 on-site coverage, and that's why the West Side Station became so critical. If you were to give me, look in your mayoral crystal ball right now, when could you assure people of the west side of Sun Prairie that there will be an active West Side fire station in place?
Well, as soon as we can determine the configuration with certainty as to what County Trunk C is really going to be like and where it's going to be located, we will buy the land and start construction shortly thereafter.
Construction moves smoothly after you decide where to put it. Is that
Right.
what you're basically saying?
Right.
Back on the taxes issues for a moment, do you believe the governor was right to veto the Republican-initiated property tax freeze? And if you do, how do you respond to the seemingly overwhelming popularity of that initiative by the general public?
Oh, this takes more than a crystal ball to look at. Both parties, I think, had the best interests of what they thought the best interests of the population of the state of Wisconsin. Different formats of how to the property tax freeze, I think is an excellent idea. However, it's something that has to be initiated, in my mind, by local government. I just wish the state of Wisconsin would impose a property tax freeze upon themselves.
Before they impose it on
Yes, I
somebody
mean,
else.
yeah, they don't. I mean, it's spending as usual. They can talk that the governor has eliminated a lot of jobs, 2,500 or something to that nature, in one breath, but in the second breath, most of those people have just been ushered from one position to fill a different slot where vacancies had occurred. So I don't believe that if we had a final record as far as employment figures, that the state employment figures would have dropped very
By
much.
2,500 jobs.
I don't think so. That's a very difficult situation because I really think that both parties, whether it be the governor or the Republican House, I truly believe that they have the best interests of the constituents of the state of Wisconsin, but they're approaching it in different directions.
During the campaign, you criticized the preliminary work being done on adding a third floor to City Hall, which we were just talking about. Why, and in light of the continued growth and seemingly need for staff people, where will you put them? And I think you just addressed, but is that really going to solve the needs of a community that perhaps will double in size over the next 15, 20 years?
Well, 15 or 20 years from now, I probably won't be sitting in the mayor's chair, and that'll be a decision that someone else is going to have to make as to whether or not
To add that third story.
that third story is going to be necessary. I firmly believe that we can make the necessary moves. We're building facilities that are going to house fire and EMS primarily, that various other areas, as I've said, whether it be dispatch, whether it be records and that sort of thing, would have no problem finding a good home in that type of facility, which would free up a great amount of space. Down the road, we're going to be looking at building additional things for public works, as an example. I've already talked with Kathleen Falk, county executive, relocating perhaps the county garage. And I know for a fact that John Norwell has looked for years to get rid of that property on East Main Street. And now it's become very prime location property. And at a crunch time, the county could sell that, make a fairly decent dollar, and in turn be looking at moving in with the city of Sun Prairie in a municipal county garage facility. One set of gas pumps, diesel fuel, what have you, one salt shed, one this, one that, one the other things, where we can both, county and the city, save dollars by not going through repetition of people and equipment.
That brings up another issue. With the downtown redevelopment project, as you're well aware, we just built a new public works facility in downtown Sun Prairie maybe 5, 6, 7 years ago. However, the downtown redevelopment plan wasn't a thought in anybody's mind at the time. Does that facility and its location really fit with downtown redevelopment? And if it doesn't, is there any initiative to look at a potential different, more appropriate site for that, freeing up space downtown for development that's more conducive with downtown appearances and uses?
Yes.
Okay. Would you like, is that what you were just talking about, or is it go beyond
no,
that?
it goes, what I was talking about goes beyond that, but it certainly could incorporate what we were talking about before. That facility in mind, and it is a nice structure. It's a good, it's an attractive building. And it's one that I think could be sold and utilized by someone else. This isn't going to happen tomorrow, and it's not going to happen in the next 5 years.
Never say never in the next 5 years. I've seen growth go too quickly in this city.
It might, but projected time frame, it isn't going to happen overnight.
Explain to me something with regard, I know you're determined not in however many terms you serve as mayor, not to build a third floor onto City Hall. But as you're well aware, because you were there when the plans were being drawn up, there is the footings in place.
Oh, I know.
And the accommodations were put there to make it fiscally responsible, but to build upward versus outward. If you just additional space in a West Side center and shuffle people that would have gone upstairs into space in the police department downtown and have to create new space for those people in a West Side emergency service center, how has anything been saved? And would you not be better, in fact, to just relent and build the third floor in the first place?
I don't know, Don. That's yes or no can't answer that question, and it takes a lot of study to do it. The two departments that I've proposed, that being dispatch and that being records, can operate anywhere. And you're building a facility that would really, they would fit hand in hand in a West Side center. They wouldn't be out of place. I know that when that building was constructed, that the footings, the foundation, the base would accommodate a third floor. And I know also at that time that we discussed putting on a third floor.
And you voted against it.
Blank. I voted against it. Well, for most of City Hall, I voted against it for
very
site
true.
location, first and foremost, because I knew of which we all knew, but the contamination within the area from various chemicals and gasoline and that sort of thing, which were extremely costly. But certainly, who is to say when we attain 35,000 people or more, what we're going to need as far as space facilities? At that point in time, will one service area for the police department be sufficient, or should it be split? At the present time, it's not being considered to be split. But you know, in 10 years from now, 15 years from now, it might behoove us to look at having 2 separate precincts. So the crystal ball isn't extremely clear on these things, because there's a lot of thought and discussion that has to go into it, and where it's most economically feasible without cutting back on the services and the primary results that are needed within the community.
Lastly, Your Honor, on the budget issue again, have you given staff and/or the council a cap or an acceptable amount of tax increases that you'd accept?
Staff, yeah, I think council is well aware as well. No tax increase. That's the least that I would accept. Now, I've told them early on, if they want to make me happy, I'd prefer to have a tax decrease.
During the campaign and the debate that there became some give and take between you and your opponent, Larry Olness, about levy increases in various years. During your terms, it was alleged that they were averaged 8.9 or 9.2% levy increases, and you charged back that during his term we had levy increases of 17, 18, 19%. I gather from your tone today that levy increases in itself are no longer a concern they were on the mayoral trail.
Levy increases are a concern if they result in increased taxes.
Okay.
Levy increases are a concern if they reduce taxes for a year to make something look good, and then turn around the following year and you're forced with raising the taxes the following year to make something look bad, to try and overcome a specific cut in the tax. But that's, if you can go along on a consistent trail, and this is, staff is well aware of this as well, any windfalls that we come up with, I don't want put totally into a reduction of tax
I think
for
the
1
states
year.
learned the
Right.
mistake of that,
Yes.
initiative.
So I want to have enough carryover if there is a windfall of any sort, unexpected. And rather than pump it into 1 year and then have to turn around and raise the taxes and say, sorry, folks, no, that isn't going to happen. We have to have a cushion. We have been building a cushion, and try to continue to do that as well, so that that isn't going to harm us. I want our bond rating to remain high. It's just that we're doing things hopefully a little bit better, a little bit smarter than what we've had in the past, and we're getting the cooperation. Staff is doing it.
Folks, thank you so much for joining this afternoon. And Your Honor, thank you for being a difference maker in Sun Prairie.
Thank you, Don.
Yep, you're welcome.